The day it happened started off like any other. I walked into the office like always, and then someone from IT came and said, "Hey, Philipp, we have a problem." Once we realized the full extent of it, we walked through the plant and saw everything had come to a standstill, a complete standstill. No machines running, nothing. It was just quiet. Then I realized, if we don't figure this out, the entire company, all 200 jobs, everything is at stake.
If everything is connected, everything can be hacked.
Cybersecurity is ever more crucial.
It's called ransomware, and it's a huge and expensive problem for all of us.
Ransomware, software used to extort a ransom, racks up costs in the billions.
For me, it was clear. I was willing to pay a relatively high price, but if at all possible, I wanted to avoid paying a ransom.
Hello, Mr. Bosshard. This is not a telemarketing.
It's an honor to intro my friend John DiMaggio,
who went undercover into the world of Lockbit.
He's one of the top cyber espionage practitioners on the planet.
So the way that it works, to conduct a ransomware attack, the first step is to get into the network. And there's two primary ways that that takes place. The first is through social engineering, which means I'm gonna look up some of the people at the company, or I'm just going to send mass emails to people at a certain company and hope that somebody clicks on it. And if they do, it sort of opens up a pathway for them to come in. The other way that they do it is they'll scan a company's infrastructure or the servers that touch the internet, all of their computers that have a live connection, and they'll look for vulnerabilities. Now, regardless of how you get into the network, once you're there, you still have work to do. They have to find a way to escalate those privileges in order to get the key to unlock these doors from within. So if you get into these systems, you can disperse ransomware all at one time. But there's a second part of ransomware that's sort of evolved over the past couple of years, and that's stealing data. So what they do with double extortion is before they encrypt your data, they actually go and they will steal it. So now once they have gotten your data, now it's time to lock all of your data. So not only can I threaten to leak all your customers' information, but you're helpless to do anything about it. They have all your sensitive information and they've completely locked you out of everything.
The first time I heard about ransomware, I automatically started picturing the scene in my mind. If you hear that you've been hacked and your data has been encrypted, above all, you're going to feel powerless and helpless. And that's exactly how I felt.
The Bosshard Farben Company asked for our help in March 2025. We assessed the situation and found a scene of utter devastation. The first question was, of course, could Bosshard Farben save itself by restoring a backup of its data? Those are the times when the whole future of a company is at stake.
Of course, we were under time pressure because in our business, if the customer orders today, they want the product by tomorrow.
No, what happens is when they lock down all your files, they're nice enough to leave a note on the desktop of your computer.
The document on the server listed all their terms. It also stated that we had 12 days to meet those terms.
We then met as a crisis team and made contact with the hackers. That's when we saw that 400 gigabytes of data had been stolen. They also threatened to publish the data.
And they almost have like a chat panel where you log in. And then you have these negotiations, and you have to decide if you're going to pay for this or not.
In our case, they were demanding $250,000 in Bitcoin.
The hackers want to monetize their attack. We enter negotiations to buy time. The worst thing is if you're forced to pay. Then it comes down to the choice. Either I pay or I shut down the company.
Of course, if you can't recover the backup of your data, at some point you have to decide what consequences you're prepared to live with.
My background that brought me to ransomware, I actually started out, I was an engineer, and I was writing blogs about bad guys that I would find out there on the internet as a hobby. And I got recruited to work for an intelligence agency. They trained me on how to go after other nation states that were conducting espionage against the United States. So having that expertise, I went to the private sector. I went out there on the dark web and I was like, hey, ransomware bad guys talk to all the victims. Maybe they'll talk to me. Fast forward to 2022, I started going after Lockbit, which is one of the top groups in the ransomware ecosystem.
Lockbit is the world's most prolific ransomware variant.
Or at least they were. I went in and I tried to join that group, and I didn't get through the full interview, but when it was over, the leader of the group left me in their private channel.
The Lockbit ransomware group, led by the online persona Lockbit Sup.
And I just pretended to be this young upcoming hacker that idolized him, because I knew ego was the way to get to him, and I just kept asking questions and trying to learn. And then after about 6 months, I had all the information about how their group worked, and I wrote this 70-page paper. The next day after I released that report, it was in the news. I had government intelligence agencies calling me. I had law enforcement calling me, and not just from the US, from all over the world. So at that point, I was like, well, I got nothing to lose now. I might as well try and talk to him as me. So I sent him a message and I said, hey, I'm John DiMaggio. I just wrote about you. You want to talk? And I expected maybe a threat or telling me, to f off or something like that, but he didn't. The response was, I love you, you best researcher. So we formed a relationship that lasted for 3 years. At the end of this ends with the leader of the group being indicted and his name being plastered all over the place.
By day 2, we were hopeful that we might be able to do something with the backup. We were at a point where we were no longer just holding the hackers at bay, but actively working to recover the data too. Obviously, in the IT department, the lights burned well into evenings until quite late at night. Especially in Walter Zimmermann's office, our IT manager.
When we looked at the data, we saw that the backups were affected too, so we had to try to find a backup that was still working. We searched through all our past backups and found one that was 7 days old. Of course, we had to check all the data first to see if it was clean and something we could work with. We had to check if there was anything that might have been hidden in the background. We knew if we couldn't restore it, everything would be gone.
Dann ist alles vorweg.
Our company was founded in 1947 by my grandfather, and it's been in the family ever since. I took over as managing director in 2009. We now have just under 200 employees. Over 80% of our revenue comes from products for painting and decorating, for people painting their own homes, interior and exterior. Everyone knows each other here. Many of our employees have been with us for years. In a situation like this, with the cyber attack, you think less about the company's history and more about the fact that not just your staff, but also their families are depending on their income. Of course, some of our people were afraid, wondering what would happen, what would become of the company, and what it would mean for them personally. Some of the people in the IT department were really beating themselves up. So I had to go to them, put myself in their shoes and tell them, hey, it's okay. Sure, mistakes were made, but you can't make an omelette without breaking eggs.
We just worked and worked and worked. If you let yourself think too much, things just became difficult. Especially because we didn't know if there was anything left to save. It was a really tough time.
On the day it happened, I was truly at my wit's end. I thought, it's over. I sat at my desk in my office just in despair. I thought, you might as well go to the solvent storeroom, toss in a match and go home. That's it.
There's the emotional toll, and that's what you never hear about. To see like the real emotion and the sadness and the sorrow and the pain, like you don't hear about that when you read an article about someone's data getting encrypted or stolen. But these type of stories happen all the time. There's a much larger effect. People lose their jobs, they lose their businesses, they lose clients. It affects so much more than just the data and the 0 and 1s.
There were moments like that, where all I wanted to do was weep. Even now, when I think about it, I start tearing up again. It was very, very emotional. I thought everything that we've built up over the past 20 years could just vanish now. Well, I'd still have the land, I suppose.
I'm Inge van der Bijl. I work at Nordwave as Director Innovation. And I'm one of the ransomware negotiators, and I support boards during incidents. If we look at the mental impact of these kinds of incidents, is that there is tremendous stress, not only in the first 24 hours, but in many, many, many days, weeks, and even years after an incident. When a family company is hit, there are more emotion involved. People are the company, so it's not only your job, you're part of that company.
On day 3, we got the news. Yes, we found something we can restore.
Next, you have to reconstruct the path of the attack, tracing it back to patient 0. We need to figure out how they got in so that we can eliminate them from the network later.
They had attacked the entire system. It wasn't clear how long they'd been in there or what damage they'd done. We had to check each server individually to find out if it was clean.
We spent a long time trying to figure out if there were any other vulnerabilities in the system. So they couldn't find a way back in.
We took a forensic approach, retracing the entire attack. We found the entry point. It was a so-called remote access solution. We also figured out which username and password they used. It was a login with a very weak password. From there, they tried to infiltrate the system, but ran into problems because Bosshard Farben's internal security architecture was very modern.
Later, we discovered that the hackers had gained access through the computer screens on our forklifts in the high bay warehouse. Then they were able to infiltrate the rest of the system. Once we were sure everything was working again, we were initially very relieved. But there was still another issue. What would happen to the data that was stolen if we didn't pay up? And then the blackmailer contacted me by phone.
Hello, Mr. Bosshard. My name is Mike Forden. This is not a telemarketing. We are not sure if you are aware of what's happening. They are trying to hide the real information from you.
They then tried calling me again at home on my personal number. They thought I had no idea that my negotiators had walked away from the table. And it was clear to me, if they're calling me at home, they obviously know a lot about me.
Offensichtlich ziemlich viel über mich.
Latest research shows a cybercrime report is made every 6 minutes in Australia.
There's so much money to be made in cybercrime.
There's estimates that global losses exceed $1 billion per year.
The typical cliché of a ransomware hacker is now outdated. These are highly professional organizations. There's even cybercrime as a service or ransomware as a service.
They are formally organized. They have an HR department. They have holidays. They have a 2 weeks pay. And we also know that they are linked towards the Russian government.
The Russian authorities turn a blind eye to the cybercrime economy that has developed. But there are certain rules. They're free to attack the West, but not former Soviet countries. And it's actually of interest to the authorities because the hackers gather information and then share that stolen data with the government.
The biggest impactful part of my multi-year investigation with the Lockbit ransomware gang, for a lot of it, it was research. Be on a vacation, there's no days off. There's no logging on off at 9. There's no having a weekend off. But I would talk to him 3-4 times a week. It just got to be so common, you stop looking at it as like this unique thing. I have a very close family friend, and he had a son who was 8 years old, who got a very rare condition. He was in a children's hospital in an ICU, and I happened to have the same blood type, so I went there in order to give blood. And while I was there, it was the worst place I've ever been in. You could just, the despair in the air, it impacted me. There came a point where Lockbit had attacked a hospital in Chicago called St. Anthony's Hospital, and I got very upset. There's a children's cancer unit in this hospital, and if you lock down their systems, those are the same systems that provide treatment to these children that have cancer. There's rules to what I do. You can't get emotionally and personally involved, because once you do, you make mistakes. I really believed that I could get Lockbit to give the hospital the decryption key, and he just didn't care. He wouldn't do it. It was that moment, though, where I decided things changed. That moment, I decided I was going to work with law enforcement. Let's go get this guy. And I worked with them for over the next 6 months until we got Dimitri.
The FBI and British authorities have taken down what they're calling the world's most prolific ransomware group.
We have unmasked the man behind Lockbit Sup.
Russian national known as Lockbit.
Here he is right here, Dmitry Koroshev.
Dmitry Koroshev.
Lockbit had a website for negotiating with victims, among other things. One day it disappeared. It was replaced by a short message: "Don't do crime, crime is bad." Below that was a link where users could download a copy of Lockbit's internal database. So someone, we don't know who, hacked Lockbit itself and published their data. The hackers were hacked. In all this data, we found a list of all the victims who were attacked during that period, including who paid how much. One company stood out in particular because it paid nearly $2 million. That was by far the highest amount on the list of victims. And it was a Swiss company.
Can you give us the name?
The company's called Bytes & More. They're an IT provider based in Aargau.
It was the first real crisis I'd ever experienced in my career and in the company. For the first 24 hours, I was completely overwhelmed and didn't know which way to turn. Thankfully, though, that eventually turned into a source of energy that I could harness. My name is Jonas Hauenstein. I'm the managing director of Bytes & More.
We serve as the external IT department for many of our clients. You can picture it like a spider's web. We're at the center of the web, and our clients are at their respective locations. And there's a virtual link with each location via the internet. The hackers didn't break into our systems, they infiltrated our clients' systems. We worked about 14 hours a day for 6 weeks to get our clients back online. Of course, not all clients were affected to the same extent. We suffered the damage because all our devices were encrypted. We had to set everything up again from scratch. Then we restored the data and resumed our work.
We as a company did not pay any ransom money because we had a backup of our data. We don't know to what extent our customers paid a ransom or were affected.
Do you know whether payments were ultimately made or not?
Clearly they were, because the people got their data back. So we've been in touch with Bytes & More, and they told us they didn't pay, and I believe them. Still, money changed hands. So if it wasn't them, it must have been one or more of their customers who paid the ransom.
You find yourself involved in a situation that you're not proud of. It might have a negative impact on our customers or on us to be appearing on camera like this. But I think it's important to speak out and say, we were attacked and we've learned from it. That way, maybe someone else can learn from it too, even if they haven't been directly affected. So people can put a face to a situation like this, something that often doesn't happen.
The truth is, anybody can become a target. Microsoft's one of the most secure companies in the world. They've been hit before. So anybody can become a victim, and I always say this, there's no shame in becoming a victim. Anyone can be hacked. It's how you handle it once that happens that makes the difference.
I definitely understand why some companies pay up. If we hadn't had that backup, we probably wouldn't have had another option either. Ultimately, though, it's not a business model that I want to support. Doing these things should not be worthwhile for these people.
If I could assign one task to world leaders, would be to stop paying ransom payments. If we stop paying, we bleed bad for a while, but it would go away.
When you, as a country, forbid to pay ransom, you indeed influence the business model of the ransomware attackers, but the impact for the companies that are attacked is enormous. So you need to have kind of mitigation measures as a country, as a government, to support those victims when they are attacked, because companies will be disrupted completely because they are not able to operate anymore. You do need to protect yourself. You also lock your door. You also have cameras in your company. So this is the digital side of it. The risk for such an attack is pretty high, so you need to educate yourself as well. We owe ourselves that. We are responsible for that.
I grew up in a not great environment. I had my own taste of conducting crimes and doing some bad things. When I look at these ransomware criminals, they're kids. And maybe I'm naive, but I always try to steer them in the right direction. I don't want that guy being my adversary again. I want to hire him someday.
I've said so much already. Okay, perhaps the one thing left to say is, this thing has happened to us now, and I think it's important to talk about it, to raise awareness about this issue. There are so many people who don't want to talk about it, yet it affects so many companies.